Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight on this lovely, frosty North Dakota night. It is with great pleasure that the University of Jamestown Convocations Committee presents Dr. Jeremy Holloway. He is the Assistant Professor and Director of Geriatric Education at the University of North Dakota. The focus of his research concentrated on the social determinants of health, specifically the self-efficacy, connectedness, and resiliency of older adults. Dr. Holloway has developed a curriculum focused on intergenerational programs that include growth mindset, reminiscence therapy, mindfulness, guided imagery, and smart goal-setting practices to nourish internal qualities and self-agency of older adults. These best practices for wellness and health promotion address needs related to loneliness and social isolation. Dr. Holloway is also an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially regarding social determinants of health for all people. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Jeremy Holloway.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's freezing, so it's always good when you just have folks come and be a part of something that they know is important. And so I'm very, very grateful. First, I want to say thank you to the president, Polly Peterson, just for her work and all the things that she does. And making it's not easy being a leader of anything. So I'm really grateful. Dr. Penny Brees, thank you so much for all of the work that you did and just for the invitation. Very grateful for you and all the work that you do for this community. And also the Convocations Committee, wanted to say thank you for talking amongst yourselves and saying, yeah, let's do this. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to be here. I was going to share this later, but I'll share a little bit about myself, that I'm from Ohio, originally from Northwest Ohio. Does anyone know anybody from Ohio? See, I was just going to start with knowing anyone. Is there anyone from Ohio? Yeah, see, that's why I start. That's why I start. Does anyone know anybody from Ohio? A little bit more positive. But now you do, because I'm from Ohio. And I've been in North Dakota for about 3 years now. We love it. We love it, except for the winter. We really love everything about North Dakota. No, actually, the winters aren't too bad either. But I'm extremely grateful to be here, and it's such an honor to talk and celebrate such a prestigious event that took place, many events that took place through the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Wow. It is indeed today, in this moment, a prestigious event, because today we're celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And, I may walk around a little bit. I'm attached, so I can't go too far. But I'm going to stay here. I'm going to look at you. I'm going to read this, look at you again, walk, come back, okay? I'm a teacher, so I like talking about things I'm going to do ahead of time. So, if you haven't met a teacher before, which most of you probably have, this is what it's going to be like, okay? So, does anyone know why? By the way, when I ask questions, they're easy. Well, actually, they might be hard for some and easy for others. You never know when you're asking a question. But does anyone know why we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on the third Monday of January? Yeah, okay. I'm seeing mouths moving. So that's right. It's because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday is January 15th. He was born January 15th, 1929, right? Just a couple years ago. Dr. King was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and he graduated from Morehouse College. Side note, Samuel L. Jackson did too. That's interesting. But anyway, later he earned a PhD in systematic theology in 1955. And during his studies, he became deeply influenced, actually, by the nonviolent resistance of Gandhi, which I think is really cool because Gandhi came from a very different background than Dr. Martin Luther King. But Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. could be wise enough to see, wow, Gandhi here is practicing something that's biblical, but he's doing it really well. The people from my religion can learn a lot of things from this person. And that takes a lot of wisdom, right? To look at someone different than you, with a different background, and respect what they do enough to implement what they say into your own life, that's really cool. Dr. King did that even early in his studies, and he really implemented that practice to a very, very great extent. So we mostly know Dr. King from I Have a Dream, his I Have a Dream speech. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if you haven't heard of it, because then I get offended. So, but we mostly know him from the I Have a Dream speech, which took place in 1963. I was going to ask this question later, but did anybody see the live televised event in 1963? Okay, yes, all right. So it took place at the Lincoln Memorial. How many, this is the teacher in me again. I'm just asking you guys questions because I'm a social person, so I like to be somewhat interactive. But how many of you have been to the Lincoln Memorial before? All right, awesome. Me too. I remember the first time that I went, still moves me to this day. One of my favorite places to go is Washington, D.C., and to see the monuments there. It's just, to me, it's absolutely incredible. So 250,000 people showed up and in Washington, D.C. to be a part of this incredible event. But also, it was televised so that millions of individuals could see it live. So I want to give some credit to the United States, because I think sometimes when we think back and we're in these kind of events where we can mostly look back and look at the bigotry and how much hatred or racism existed. Surely it did, but also there was something going on in the United States enough to recognize a powerful and great event enough to televise it live for all Americans to see. That's really cool. To see a protest movement televised live and millions of people saw it. There must have been something special about this protest, right? That was different. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. But I still marvel at that, and I think it's wonderful, and it's good to approach things in this kind of way with that kind of appreciation. So, Dr. King, there's so many things that I could share from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speech. I mean, oh my goodness. But I'm going to start with one. One is he spoke the words, "My country, 'tis of thee. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty," right? Maybe maybe some of you have, maybe a lot of you know this song, right? And I remember the first time I heard this song, and it really moved me a lot. I was probably 5. How many things you remember when you're 5? But I remember first hearing that song in the classroom. And we pledged allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the Republic. So after that, we sang the song. It moved me so much. Matter of fact, I'm going to sing it right now. I'm going to get my guitar. So this song, I just love it so much that I thought I'd bring my guitar. And did you guys think I was going to come and bring a guitar and play? But I'm going to sing this song. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I'm going to sing it again. And if any of you know it, sing it to yourself. If you feel, why would you feel embarrassed to sing this? But anyway, that's just what's going on in the back of my head. Sing it if you want to, okay? All right. Do you know the words? In diversity, equity, inclusion, you never want to really assume anything, right? But okay. My country 'tis. Do we want to stand and sing this song? Sure. Let's stand and sing this song. All right? All right. Let's sing this song together. My country 'tis of the sweet land of liberty, of the I sing. Land where my fathers died, home of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. Let's give yourselves in the United States a round of applause, because that's That song moves me very much, right? My father's, my dad's alive, but the fathers before him did die in this land, right? If I asked you to raise your hand, if your fathers and parents, mothers died in this land, great-greats, or just great-greats, or just father, mother, I think a lot of you might raise your hand. It moves me a lot. Dr. King, he repeated the phrase, let freedom ring, 10 times at least in his speech. He said, let freedom ring. And he named many different locations where he was saying, let freedom ring. So, there are many other things that we can share from the speech. And we're also going to talk about, what does this mean for us today? Let's talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. So the Emancipation Proclamation, what is that? It was declared in the United States to be free, for the United States to be free of using the system of slavery. It was, in fact, the beginning and the start of something that I call inside-out freedom. This proclamation was the beginning of freeing a lot of different things in the United States. The truth that Dr. King pointed out is that the Emancipation Proclamation was the beginning because on the outside, on paper, things look good, right? Like we're proclaiming slave abolished, and then it was official. The only issue is there was a lot of work to do on the inside of all Americans. A lot of work to do on what I call the groundwork, ground zero. The work that people can't see, but you only experience the effects of. That's the work that needed to be done. And we all equally have this work to do inside. One thing I want to point out real clearly is that this isn't work that one particular group in the United States needs to do. If you're a human being, you have as much work as I do inside with this, right? We're on the same level, same playing field when it comes to that. I know you might not hear that in some places, but I think it's evident here where Dr. King, he reiterated this quote that you will recognize. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. All men are created equal. That means that we have this same quality on the inside that is equal. Dr. King also shared about the content of one's character trumping the color of one's skin. So the content of one's character, that's the things on the inside that people don't see, but you will see the effects of because it shows up in people's actions. That trumps what's on the outside, right? So there must be more value in living from the inside out instead of outside in, right? So mostly Dr. King shared his beloved vision for a legacy of freedom and what that looks like. Because whenever you share a vision, you have to share, what does that actually look like? And he encouraged and he urged us, actually the people listening, but us too, to spur it on today. He said he could see black boys and black girls and white boys and white girls playing together, holding hands. So I'm going to share something interesting. I'll share some things about myself, right? I'm married. My wife is white as can be. No, I don't know what that means, but she's white, and people call me black. Sometimes caramel, but black. And we have kids. But the funny thing is, we have 4 kids, right? They're young, but we have 2 boys, 2 girls. 2 boys look like my wife, and the 2 girls look like me. So, like the oldest, my daughter, noticed something, a pattern in our family. I'm the oldest. My wife's a little younger than me. But, and our kids were born girl, boy, girl, boy. So she said, Daddy, I caught a pattern. I was like, what pattern are you talking about? And she said, with us, in our family. I was like, what is it? And she said, our family is brown, peach, brown, peach, brown, peach. I was like, oh, that's right. That's good. That's a good observation. She's right. Even in order, it is. I'll show you guys pictures one day, but it's true. The funny thing is, even though we have, a black boy and white girl, black girls and white boys, I can't tell you in all honesty that in our house they're always holding hands and playing together, friendly. But for the most part, they are. So, but Dr. King's speech, he talked about all kinds of people of all kinds of races playing together and collaborating together. I'll tell you some more things about me, too. I was born to Tyrone and Dolores Holloway, and I was a shy kid growing up. I hardly spoke. I'll take this off. So I hardly spoke. I had a stutter growing up. It sounded like this. I couldn't really get my words out at all. And I'm the youngest, so maybe that's why everybody was talking. And I was like, okay, you guys just do what you do. And so for me, it was tough when I had opportunities to speak. And in college, that's when I decided that I would be a part of a student organization that, actually, I didn't choose to be a part of it to help me with speaking. I just thought this was a cool student organization. So, but every Friday, they would have this event, small event, it was like 50 people, and they would, for Toledo, Ohio, and we would stand up in front of everybody and share things that we learned from the week. And they did that every single Friday. And I remember the first time I did it, I did it for about 10 years, like almost 10 years, almost every single Friday. So I got better and better at it. But when I first did it, it was really bad. They were like, what's wrong with this guy? Like, it wasn't good, But I got this Eminem song in my head. I kept rhyming and kept writing the next cipher. Best believe somebody's paying the Piper. You guys aren't Eminem fans. But by the way, I good, because I think in America, I think it's really cool that a white boy from Detroit can become one of the best rappers in the world, right? I just think that's kind of cool, only in America. So, but for me, I kept working at it. And I was able to graduate. I hardly graduated from high school. I graduated from the University of Toledo with 2 degrees in Spanish and education, became a teacher, taught, traveled a lot, traveled the world, and then I got master's in PhD. So how did I get here? Anyone ever wonder that? I live in Fargo with my family. We live in Fargo, and I'm a professor at UND. I know most of you have done the research. UND's not in Fargo, right? But we wanted to live in Fargo. We have a son on the spectrum. We really wanted to make sure there were resources for us, so they got me an office in Fargo, and I have an office in Grand Forks too that I visit once a year or something. And but how did I get here? How did I get here in North Dakota? Well, I defended the dissertation in February 2020. Do you guys remember March 2020? Okay. There's unity at least in that experience, right? But anyway, I was going to church, and there is a part-time pastor there who was a full-time chaplain at a retirement community, and he told us he was sharing just really raw about his experience in these nursing homes and assisted living communities that he was in. He was talking about older adults who are dying from social isolation and loneliness. They weren't allowed to leave their rooms, which, on paper, I guess it makes sense, but the problem was they couldn't see their families. They couldn't see their friends, the people that they're connected with. They stopped eating. They gave up hope and were dying. That really, really, really moved me a lot. Really moved me a lot. So my dissertation was focused on helping underrepresented, underserved students at the university, and helping to build self-efficacy. They're giving them some goal setting strategies, different things like that. What I decided to do was further develop that program, and I created an intergenerational program called To Legacy, and it connects university students in healthcare fields with older adults who were feeling socially isolated and alone. So what the students would do is they would be matched with an older adult, meet once a week, virtually or over the phone, have a conversation. But I wanted it to be more than just a conversation, and I'm a curriculum guy. My PhD is in curriculum and instruction, so I created a curriculum to prepare them for it. And so the students and the older adults met afterwards. They would take notes that would further be developed, and we would give the older adults a legacy book that summarized the stories that the older adults shared with the students to reinforce the fact that their story matters, they matter, and their story is one to be told. How many of you agree with that? Their story is one to be told. Because when I say their story is one to be told, I'm saying my story is, and your story is one to be told. One of the things I found out later is that older adults, when we say underrepresented groups, sometimes we think of just, Hispanic people or black people or this group or that group. Underrepresented groups are groups that aren't feeling heard. I found out that older adults, especially during the pandemic, were so underrepresented that they didn't make the list of the popular groups that were underrepresented. Not to discredit anybody, it's just that we think of underrepresented groups as just sometimes particular groups because of what we may see on the news or what we grew up, in our family, what was talked about in our family or whatever. But an underrepresented group is a group that's not being heard regardless of wherever they come from. They're individuals who matter and who have unalienable rights to be heard, feel heard, and live out what in the United States we have a really powerful phrase of living out and pursuing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so this is what we all have a right to, and it really moved me, and I created that program for that reason. The University of North Dakota found out what I was doing a little bit, and I got hired. Geriatric professor at the University of North Dakota. There, how you like those apples? So that's really how that happened, and that's why I'm here. Yeah, sure. I'm really grateful because, gosh, there's so many things I learned, right? Man, which I would start just unfolding it right now, but that's why I organized it here. I won't tell you on one bit, piece by piece. So the training program, let me tell you about the training program because it's related. There's 4 components. There's mindfulness, reminiscence, therapy, goal setting, right? And growth mindset. So basically, I created the curriculum just as a learning to listen curriculum, an opportunity just to listen to the stories of the older adults and also to share the stories too. Because sometimes you have these programs, students come in, they sit down and interview. In my program, we're not allowed to use the word interview because the students share their story too, right? The older adult needs to hear their story, and the older adult needs to share their story to the student as well. They're both human beings living out a life, experiences. Both are valuable. And when both are listening to one another, great magical things can happen, I guess. So what I call that is a diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum, because it's a curriculum where you're valuing a person because they're a person, because they're a human being, not because they come from a certain group, not because they just have an assignment, because they're a person, and that gives them the right to just be heard because they're a human being. So I implemented that curriculum, and it focuses on values in diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Sometimes they call it DEI. There's also DEIB, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. But really, I shouldn't say they're all the same, but they all come from the same thing. So I was asked to speak on the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion, how it relates to Dr. King and his legacy. And it does relate, so that's why I'm going to talk about how it relates. I'm going to talk about 3 things about diversity, equity, and inclusion. How many have never heard of diversity, equity, and inclusion before? Okay, yeah, okay. We got a couple. This is cool. Let me give a short introduction to diversity and inclusion. Basically, it's an opportunity. Let me just share what I wrote, okay? Because it's going to help. It's going to help y'all. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is what will diversity and inclusion, which I'm going to call DEI, what will it not be used for? There's some things that diversity, equity, and inclusion is being used for, and we should be knowing about DEI because it's showing up in our movies. It's showing up on social media, etc. So, also the second thing is what will DEI not be used for? What will DEI be used for is number 2, and then number 3 is what opportunities and impacts come as a result of using DEI or having DEI principles in an institution such as a university like this. So there's a lot here, but the first one is avoiding what would it not be used for. The first thing it won't be used for is to push the agenda of one individual or a particular group. So there's a lot of that going on. Diversity, equity, inclusion has been hijacked. It's been hijacked in a lot of ways to be used to just promote one particular group over a bunch of other groups. And that's not what diversity, equity, inclusion is used for. It's actually used for quite the opposite. It's used to put aside agendas so that we can have an opportunity for others of all kinds of backgrounds to be heard and valued. So diversity is about basically diverse individuals, right, from diverse backgrounds. So there's a whole evolution of this whole thing. So I can't really unpack it all right now, but basically the diversity just represents, different people. So different kinds of people. We want to have different kinds of people in the room. But that's not quite enough, right? Like, we have different kinds of people in the room. That's great. Equity is about giving different kinds of people opportunities that are equitable. Not equal, but equitable, right? So they have this, there's this famous, I don't know if it's famous, but they have this picture of 3 individuals looking at a baseball field, right? I've seen this too so many times, but one person's super tall, right? So they can see the game just fine. Another person is a little shorter, right? And they can't really see it. And then the other person's super shorter, so they can't see anything, right? Well, equal would be just them, on the same plane, but 2 can't really see. 1 tall person can. And equitable would be that tall person's able to see, the other person has like some kind of prop so that they can see, and then the third person has like 3 props so that they can see the game just like the tall person. Does that make sense? That's equitable. Inclusion means just because people have opportunities, that doesn't mean much. We have to find ways to include them so that they can belong, feel like they belong no matter where they come from. And that's what diversity, equity, inclusion is about. Unfortunately, diversity, equity, inclusion, when a lot of institutions adopt it, which a lot of people did during the George Floyd time, like around 2020 summer, companies, institutions, they all like brought in diversity, equity, inclusion, like directors of programs and of companies, et cetera, because of what was going on, for racial justice in 2020 and like around the summer of 2020. But, and the issue was, and still is, that when you don't have a solid like curriculum or an agenda that is larger than the agenda of others, right, of just a particular group, then you may have certain people to hijack it. Let me say it this way, okay? I was a teacher. I taught for some years. I remember my first year teaching. It was it was hard, actually. But that summer was amazing. I never had a summer off where I was still paid. Like, that was crazy, man. To me, I was like, oh my gosh, I do nothing and I still get paid? Who's gonna come out of the corner and stop me or something? It was great. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna chillax. I'm gonna have a great time. So I made no plans. The only problem was when I started my summer, because I had no plans for that summer, my summer got hijacked by my sister, my brother, my parents. They were like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, nothing. Well, come and help me with this fence. I was like, I can't say no because I don't have any plans, So my summer got hijacked. I had plans the next summer, though. I drove from Ohio, where I'm from, to California, and it was amazing, man. Then I drove back. I drove in, like, south, part into Texas and in New Mexico, but then I drove kind of northern. And the northest I got was South Dakota, and I saw Mount Rushmore for the first time. That was pretty sweet. I loved Mount Rushmore, still do. Got to take my kids there, even though it's 8 hours away from Fargo. So that was just a great event. I learned a lesson there. But I tell you this because that's what's going on with a lot of institutions. They unfortunately, it's almost like they put a sticker of diversity and inclusion on, and these leaders can kind of do whatever they want. So they just kind of do, they push their own agenda. Like if there's a certain group that they're really passionate about, they'll push that one. I don't have time to talk about what it looks like on social media, and I'm going to talk about it actually at UND in about a couple weeks. But with social media and on cinema, you see that too. Like, I'm a big Marvel fan, and you just have to wait for what I'm going to talk about that later. But because I think Marvel's not the same as it was on cinema because there's certain agendas being pushed, and I'll talk about that. But it's not meant for that. Dr. King set the greatest example of what it's meant for. He set aside his agendas. When he was talking on the Lincoln Memorial about these issues, he wasn't trying to put a black man in the Oval Office, right? He was trying to make a vision for both white people and black people and other people, all people in between, to be connected. He had an agenda higher than just his own personal agendas. And he wasn't just trying to push the agenda of one particular group. He used what was happening with one particular group of black peoples, they called it the Negro back then, as an example of something really powerful. He brought up what the forefathers stood for, and he was just saying, this isn't what we're living out. And he challenged everybody, let's live out what these forefathers put in our Constitution for all of us, not for just me or a particular group. And so I do want to make people aware of this, because diversity, equity, inclusion, in the sense of providing opportunities for everybody to be heard, is what we need. So when you see something different, call it out. Call it out wherever you are. It doesn't matter. Please call it out. If you see someone just trying to push a certain agenda, because one group, that makes one group better than another group. And we shared earlier, no group is better than another. One human being isn't better than another human being. We're all human beings, and we're all important. The second thing to remember is, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion used for? There's a lot of things it's used for, but I will say this. The one important thing that I want us all to know is that DEI is not something that you learn so that you can just communicate with races that are different from you. A lot of people, I'm in the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee at UND, and one of our committee members actually spoke and said, what are we going to do when, if we're around people where there's no different races? How are we going to use diversity, equity, inclusion? And I was like, I'm glad you asked, because diversity, equity, inclusion isn't necessarily just for learning how to talk to people of different races. It's learning how to talk to people who you feel are the same race as you or the same gender as you about people who are from different races. Because chances are you might be around people who you feel is the same race as you more often than people who you feel like is from in a different race, different gender, etc. How are you talking about those different races when you're with same races, right? That's what matters, because that's what's changing. We're spending more time there, and our conversations form ideas, which form habits, which form character, right? And did Dr. King mention something about character? Yes, right? The content of our character. What are we doing? What are we spending most of our time doing? How are we talking? When we have the opportunities to talk about people who are different from us, how do we talk about them? And that's how diversity, equity, and inclusion, that's what diversity, equity, and inclusion is supposed to be teaching us. Tangled. So I think that one is something that you might not hear very often. After you leave here, count how many times you're going to hear that on the news and social media. I dare you. We'll come back next year. You tell me, okay? That's what it's supposed to be used for. But a lot of times you do come, how many of you have ever attended a workshop that said it was diversity, equity, and inclusion? Anyone? A couple people, right? Sometimes you'll have these speakers who just talk about their traumatic events. I'm not trying to discredit any traumatic events. I think it's great that they share and that they have a place to share. But sometimes the way that they present, and they don't really know at the time, but there's supposed to be a curriculum to help presenters for this. Sometimes when you present, you make other people feel like because they can't relate to that experience you had, that they can't really, they don't know what to do. They just feel even more at a loss for talking and connecting with people that are different from them, because I can't really relate to that traumatic event that you just shared with me. There's nothing wrong with sharing traumatic events, but we have to give other people opportunities to share as well. So that's one thing that's incredibly important, is that we give people opportunities to learn, how do I talk with all kinds of people about people that are different from me? I believe that when we talk about and stick up for people that are not in the room, then we fully live out this thing called humanity in the best way, right? Dr. King, on the stands of the Lincoln Memorial, stood up for us all, right? Some of you said you were at least there watching live. I didn't ask any of you if you were there at the Lincoln Memorial at the time. Maybe a couple of you were. But he wasn't just talking to them. He was talking to folks that weren't in the room at the time. That's us. And he knew that, and I'm going to share a little bit more later about how I think he really, really knew that. He knew what this thing meant, right? And so, number 3, the purpose of DEI is to provide all with opportunities to feel that when you speak, your voice is heard. So, in other words, like, what does it mean to be heard? What does that mean? That means deeply respected. So when you share something, no matter who's there, no matter if they're peach or brown or whatever, you feel heard. As a black person, like I do confess and admit that it took me a while to realize that what I have to say is important. I'll be honest, and I don't think it's just black people. I think it's all kinds of folks. For different reasons, we just feel like sometimes what we have to say isn't as important, right? But it could be for different reasons. Because I'm a skater and everyone around me is into hip hop. You know what I mean? Like, there could be a whole lot of different categories, right? But I want to tell you that diversity, the pure sense of DEI is to give opportunities for all to feel heard. That means deeply respected. So I'm going to ask a question, and it's a rhetorical question, and I'm going to pause so you can think about it. And then I'm going to do it again, and I'll continue on with what I'm doing right now, talking to you. First question is, students, are you feeling heard? Faculty, are you feeling heard? Staff, are you feeling heard? Administration, are you feeling heard? Community members, are you feeling heard? And however you feel is legit, right? There's no one can tell you that you're wrong because you don't feel heard. No one. I'll say that one more time. No one. The administration part is kind of interesting. That one could be tricky, right? Because we feel like, oh, the president of the university, they're always on my inbox, like they're making videos all the time. I know they're feeling heard, but the honest truth is sometimes administrators can really feel like they're not being heard because they feel like they need to, be a certain kind of person. And so they're sharing there's certain things that they know people need to hear or that they're encouraged to tell people, but they may have their own opinions or thoughts, but they feel like if they shared those, it may jeopardize their work, even though it upholds what maybe the university stands for. It's kind of, maybe a gutsy kind of thing, and they just keep quiet. And so then they don't feel heard. So, there's a lot of reasons why people may not feel heard, but diversity, equity, inclusion, at the cusp of it, it's supposed to be an opportunity for all people to feel heard, because when people feel heard, they feel valued. When they feel valued, self-esteem and self-efficacy rises in the room. And when that rises in the room, then there's a lot of collaboration that can take place. Or what Dr. King said, holding hands, right? A lot of collaboration can take place at the time. So that's why it's really, really powerful. This is what DEI is supposed to be used for. It is meant to protect those who do not currently have the power, either by position or majority or economic status, as others, to still hold the same potential of being heard as the president of the university. All are welcome. By the way, welcome and tolerated are not the same word, right? How about this? If you, what's your name, sir? Is that turquoise right there, collar? Ezra. That's a cool name. So if Ezra came to someone's house and they said, hey, you're tolerated. Come in. You are tolerated. I mean, like, does that give the same feel as, Ezra, you're welcome. You're welcome. Come on in. I like the welcome. I like the welcome better, you know? Like, it's to be welcomed is wonderful, and that's what we want. In the room, anybody from any background they feel welcome, right? We're not just saying you're welcome and then, you know, we have some different behaviors that make them feel not welcome. No, they can tell you that they feel welcome. And I think that that's really cool and that's really beautiful. This has to be done intentionally. It's got to be done strategically, right? Can't just get done by osmosis. I can't just say, this is great, and then let's see how it happens in the future. No, goals have to be set. Not everything can be done at the same time, but many things can be done now. Today, diversity, equity, inclusion has never been more important because people need to be feeling valued. And since we had this thing called a pandemic, a lot of people, not just older adults, have felt socially isolated and alone. And I'm going to talk later, not tonight, but I'll give you a snippet. I'm going to talk later about how social isolation and loneliness the U.S. Surgeon General about a year ago announced social isolation and loneliness as an epidemic in the United States. For folks that might not consider themselves as older adults, you're on social media, I just want you to be aware of this. When you feel socially isolated and alone, it's important to be aware of how that connects with social media, because with social media, it just knows the algorithm, right? So when you feel alone, you're watching different things on your feed that just reinforce the things that you feel are valuable, but it's not showing you a lot of different things. I know how the algorithm works. Every now and then, it'll show you a reel, to see if you're interested. But for the most part, it's just reinforcing things that you want to see. And so when you get around other people who are different, that has different opinions than you, you're less inclined to like tolerate it or welcome it. I mean, tolerate, let alone welcome it, because it's not what I agree with, right? And I didn't even explore narcissism that much until I started studying about social isolation and how the social media spurs on narcissism, because it just reinforces your idea that you're right and that others' opinions, you don't have to listen to them anymore, because you can go somewhere now where you can just get reinforced that you're right about all your opinions. Whew, that's dangerous. So it's just something to be aware of. I'm still on TikTok, of course, but you have to know how to navigate through it. The people who made social media, they're social network experts, but they're not social engagement experts. You guys get the difference? There's no it didn't come with the instruction manual of how to interact with individuals online and how to interpret all that stuff. And I know there's influencers that are trying to teach about that, but if we don't seek it out, it won't show up on our feed. So anyway, just wanted to get on social media for 1 second. I love social media when it's used right. It's just like fast food. You got to know how to use that. So these goals have to be set. We have to be intentional. We have to be intentional about social media. We got to be intentional about these things that don't come with manuals. So today, diversity, equity, inclusion, like I said, has never been the same. It's been hijacked, right? We know that. But now that we know some pure ways of how it can be used, especially utilizing the example that Dr. King set for us in how to approach goals related to unity with folks that are different from us, now we can start working on building blocks to build on what Dr. King's vision was and bringing it to light, what's called the Promised Land. So the Promised Land, by the way, is not a destination that we just simply arrive at one day. I have a small little exercise for you. I just want you to take a look at the ground for one moment. Just look at the ground for one moment, and I'm going to say this. The Promised Land isn't a destination one day that we'll arrive at. It's the present ground on which we build the promised land right here, right now. This is the promised land. We have the materials, but we have to build it right now. We have to build it here. That's how this thing happens. You know, sometimes we think promised land, it's a place where I'm just going to walk at, and eventually we'll get time will pass, and then we'll get there. Has that happened like in that way? It doesn't. This is it right here. And so let's start this. So how is the question? How do we do this? Well, we do it together. That's a Captain America phrase, but anyway. But we do it together, and we do it from the inside out. We focus a lot on what's going on here on the inside, and we embed, and reinforce these values within our culture, in our university, and wherever we are. We talk about culture for 1 second, because sometimes when people hear the word culture, they think, oh, that's something that black people have, or something like that, right? Culture, that's something that indigenous or, Native Americans, they have culture. No, we all have culture. What is culture? Culture are expectations, norms, and behaviors that you learned in environments. Have you ever been in an environment before? Yeah, we're in one right now. So your family has a culture. Every single one of you, your family has a culture. You learned that culture. Then you went to school. Whatever school you went to had a culture. It was different from the school down the street or the school in another city. That's a culture. And then you went to a university. Some of you are university students, maybe you graduated from here. That university had and still has a culture. It has a particular culture, right? So we have to pay attention to culture. By the way, a lot of you might not have thought about this because maybe your major wasn't curriculum. But a curriculum basically is just culture. That's what a curriculum is, right? And I wouldn't call it scary, but the interesting and concerning thing is many programs don't have a curriculum, right? Even at universities in general. There's a curriculum, an academic curriculum for students, and that's good because what a curriculum does is like showing you the norms, behaviors, etc., that you need to learn to prepare yourself for whatever field you're getting into. That's academic. But there's like a cultural curriculum that's most of the time osmosis. Like it's not written out. It could be, but no one's written it out, right? Social media, there's all kinds of cultures there. And so it's expectations, norms, etc., right? There's a way to post. There's a way to message, etc., right? So what we need to do is be more intentional about the cultures that we're setting, right? I mean, in my family, right, my wife and I, we sit together and we try to talk about what are our expectations in our family? Like, what are our goals? What are our kids' goals? Like, what's going on? What do we want out of this life with our family? That's important, right? And your goals and your culture isn't more important than mine. I can learn from yours and you can learn from mine. I say it this way, like your difference could be, I don't know what difference in you is going to make a difference. And you don't know what difference in me is going to make a difference in this world. So therefore, we can learn a lot from each other, right? So it's got to get done intentionally, and we got to take a look and see how do we do this? And it's through conversation. Sometimes you just don't know the answers, so we got to be in a safe place where we can talk about these things and just have ongoing conversations. So we embed and reinforce, and then we take action. You know, we take action every single day. And you know what? We spend 1/3 of our lives either at school or at work. So I want you to imagine a curriculum in which individuals are provided with opportunities to practice appreciating, humanizing, and sincerely listening to those they're working with, and listening to those that are different from them. And newsflash, everybody is different from you in a different way. Everybody's different from us because you're so unique. So it's good to learn that skill of, it's better for me to come to you not pretending, but understanding that there's some differences here that I could learn. Not either we're all the same, or thinking like, oh, it's too different. There's no way, because there's also similarities that connect us, that make us, that makes it important. I call them primary identities, right? We all have a birthday. I'm 100% sure everybody in here has a birthday, right? We all have hopes, dreams. Doesn't matter if we've been disappointed at all. We all have had hopes and dreams. Still do, actually, if we have been disappointed. We still will have them. They're inside. They keep touching our heart, right? We all feel different things, right? We all have a sense of family, right? So there's so much connection there. And sometimes we lose those when we're only looking at the secondary identities, which is like, this people with the same kind of hairstyle or same sport, that they're interested in, or same skin color, etc. Right? So here's the most important thing that I think I want to point out for you guys is it's important. The way we're going to do this is we're going to remember the things that were established before, because we're also connected to the things before. The present is connected to the things before, and it's connected to the things in the future. We can't make obsolete the things that are in the past, or try to even rewrite it. It's to appreciate. There's a physician, and he studies a lot about appreciation, and he helps older adults to appreciate their dementia that they're in, and it's interesting the results that came out of that. Appreciation is powerful, having a sense of appreciation. So I looked at the mission statement of the University of North Dakota, the University of Jamestown, actually, and it's to be a student-centered university dedicated to the development of wholeness in all members of our community. And there's a lot of Christian faith also founded on this university, which is really, I think it's cool. So if any of you want to help make a difference in this university, connect what you're doing with the mission and the purpose of this institution. That's very important. That's when you try to do that without taking that step first, that's what we call hijacking. You're hijacking. It's like me going to Ezra's house, and where his family lives, and says, what's up with you guys just being around? I'm just assuming you guys are all white in your house. What's up with all you guys being white in this house? I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna live here, so you guys can experience what it's like to be living with a black person. Like what? Okay, I shouldn't say no. I feel bad saying no, but that's weird. No, I'll say it for you. That's weird. So no, it's y'all's house. If I'm going to go in there and, if there's anything I see different, I should first learn about you guys, learn what you're living for, what's your purpose and everything, respect that, and then give my recommendations for what I'm thinking. And you guys don't have to listen to it because it's your house. Okay? That analogy can go a lot of places. Talk about the United States. But that's what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did. He stood up on the Lincoln Memorial and he reminded us all about our forefathers. He respected his elders. He respected the forefathers, the people before him, because he wouldn't be able to be talking about what he's talking about if he didn't first acknowledge what people did to make it possible for him to talk about that. I think in 2024, that's getting lost a little bit. Like, a lot of you might not even heard of ageism, right? Ageism is when you place people older than you on this category called not important. Because they're older, so they're just not important. Social media is not helping with that. one of the pet peeves is when you look at sports, it'll show up in my feed. This is what this guy was like in his prime. I kind of get what they're saying in prime, but then they start using it for every other category. This is what this actor was like in his prime. This is what this musician was like in their prime. I'm like, what? We're on, I want to write a book called Present is Prime. You understand? Wherever you're at right now is prime. That's your prime. It's going to always be your prime. And then to reinforce this stuff that when you're young, that's like the best time, that's only going to make you really depressed in about 10 to 15 years, right? Your prime is every day of your life. And I can vouch for the students that went through my intergenerational program. They met with 90-year-olds, the one girl, she was 20, met with a girl who was 96, and a person that's older, I shouldn't say girl, right? But a person that's older who's 96. And she just said, wow, this is a person, just like me. Actually, she's hilarious, she's funny, and like she's one 90-year-old, she's driving like a pink Cadillac and stuff, is going to like all kinds of places and telling her, student partner like what she's doing. And she was just like, wow, oh, this is the actual human being, right? Just like me. And I think that that's exactly what happens when we reinforce the value of those that came before us and saying, these people had it going on. They were really good, and they gave us opportunities to do all the stuff that we're doing right now. And so it doesn't discredit what we're doing now or what a younger person is doing. It's actually making it more meaningful, more impactful, because it's affecting so many people. Let me talk about my dad for one moment and what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. meant to me. So when I was in undergrad, I'd never received a scholarship before, but I saw a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. scholarship, and I just thought, you know what? I'll go ahead and go for it. I'll write it. I'll write an essay. That's all you had to do. So I decided I would write an essay. And what I wrote the essay about was me. It was about my hardships and the things I went through, as a 20-whatever-year-old. And there were things to me that was really hard. And so I shared that. And I didn't get the scholarship. I don't know why, but I didn't get it. And but for me, in my mind, seriously, I was thinking if I talk about I went through hard things, so that's how I relate to this man, Dr. King, because I went through hard stuff. And Dr. King, he went through some hard things. I didn't study any of it, but I knew he went through something. So, but I wanted to talk about my stuff that I went through, because that's what mattered to me at the time. And but when I didn't get it, I was like, dang, it just by coincidence, the next year, my parents were going to it was a big convention. It's a church convention. And I said, I'll go with you guys. I haven't been with my parents in a while because I was going to college and stuff. So I went with them, and it was in Memphis, Tennessee. I didn't even put the pieces together yet, but when I was in Memphis, it came to me that Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee. And they have a museum set up in his honor. And I decided that I would go and I would visit that museum. And I learned a lot of things. I learned about how Dr. King stood up for the rights of all peoples, but of black people, and he got thrown into prison, injured, spit at, did marches, and he actually, preached once and said, I'm done, I'm tired of marching. I'm tired of marching, but I have to keep marching because of what this means for others. And it really hit me. So I said to myself, I'm gonna apply for this scholarship again, but this time I think I might write about Dr. King for this Martin Luther King Jr. scholarship. And so I started to write about him, and I started to write about his experience, what he went through, and how what he went through paved ways for not just Black people, for many people to be heard and to live out this dream or vision of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, no matter what background you come from. And I shared maybe a little bit, maybe a paragraph about me at the end of how that relates, because that was a part of the essay. And so I did get the scholarship after that. So it was really cool. It was my first scholarship I ever got. It was amazing, and I decided that I would start thinking more about what did others do for me, because I thought it was kind of interesting. And I thought about my dad, so my dad, I didn't think about this until I thought about it, but my dad graduated from the same university that I graduated from, and he couldn't find a job, so it was around the 70s or whatever, so he decided to go back to his university to work. And he didn't go as a professor. He didn't go as an administrator. He went back and he worked as a janitor. That's what they called it back then, a janitor. And he worked as a janitor for 10 years, third shift. And during the day, he worked as a substitute teacher, for a long time, longer than 10 years. And he did that so that I could have an opportunity to go to college. When I graduated hardly from high school, I started playing music. And I think it was my girlfriend at the time and my uncle was like, "Why don't you go to college?" And I was like, I don't want to go to college. I just want to play music, Like, my first song I learned was Enter the Sandman. Anyone ever heard of that song before? Okay, anyway, I won't want to digress. But I wanted to just play music, and but then they said it's free, because if you have a parent that works at the university, it's free. Like your tuition is paid for and stuff. So I was like, all right, fine, I'll go to college. I went there, and I graduated. With 2 degrees. Decided I would go back and during that time, my undergrad, I finally realized this is what my dad, he did this sacrifice so that I could have this opportunity, even though I almost didn't even care about, because I wasn't thinking about what people were doing for me, And then I decided to go back, got my master's, and then I decided to go for my PhD. And I defended my dissertation in February, as I said. Right, in 2020, my parents were there, and after I defended, they said, "Congratulations." It's pretty cool when they say, "Congratulations, Dr. Holloway," because, as a PhD student, that's your first time hearing that, So it was kind of cool. But I asked my dad, like, "Isn't this pretty cool?" He was like, "Yeah, it is." And I realized we were talking more, and I realized that the floor and the room where I defended the dissertation is the same floor that he had been sweeping at night for 10 years. It gets me a little bit emotional. He was doing that for me, thinking about me, thinking about my family, his family, actually. And when he was there in the mornings, when he was almost done, professors would come in and ignore him, not look at him. And he didn't feel, it's not that he didn't feel heard, only he didn't feel seen, which is even, can be worse. And we were having coffee one day, and he said, when I experienced that, I told myself, one day I'm going to have a friend who's a professor. And he said, I never knew that would be my son. And I think we both cried or something. But, oh, man. So what I realized, I'm just glad I had an opportunity to look back and think about my dad and open up those opportunities for those conversations. Because if I never thought about that, then I wouldn't have had this I wouldn't be able to talk to you about it right now, right? I wouldn't even be able to share it with you. I don't know why. If I didn't think about things like that, I probably wouldn't even be here. So I want to encourage you, because that's what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. did. He stood up on the Lincoln Memorial, and he reminded everybody of the great country that we have. And there's still people trying to get in this country, right? And they're getting, I'm not going to say anything political. I'm just going to say something pretty cool, I think. People are coming in even illegally. They're coming in illegally. And you're like, oh, man, well, shoot. I mean, anybody, like, that's, but I just want us to think about this. Like, if any of us wanted to go to any other country, we don't have to go illegally. We can go to any other country because we can choose. Let's see, are we going to fly there? Are we going to drive there? Let me see. Do I need to get a passport? How long that take? A couple weeks? Okay. But there's other things going on in other countries that aren't like this country, and that's why they have to go illegally a lot of times. And I'm not, I don't promote people going illegally. If they can, you should go legally. I'm not a Republican or Democrat, but my principles do kind of go more right. But I think that the point is that we have privilege and opportunities here, and it's good to recognize why. Because we had people that set up a constitution that is amazing. And when we remind people of that, we unify people, and things get pretty awesome. So I want each of us to remember one thing, that Dr. King, I think he said, I have a dream, as I'm about to close. He said, I have a dream, and he didn't say, I have a vision. He said, I have a dream. Why did he do that? Well, I believe that the reason why he did that is because he knew that he might not have an opportunity to see that dream lived out. And as a matter of fact, he shared that in another speech. He said, I may not be there with you, but he said, I have been to the mountaintop, and I have seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I have seen the promised land. And so he did say, I have a dream, in hopes that the people who listen may take his dream and turn it into a living vision. A vision, right? Something that you don't just do when you're asleep. It's something you do when you're awake, right? Helen Keller, one of my heroes, said that it's the tragic thing is when you can see, but you don't have a vision, and you're not carrying out the vision. I want each of us, including me, to remember this, that we have an opportunity to live out this vision that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. gave to us as a dream. Let's not make this a one-time event right now. Let's continue this urgency to embed these values in our cultures wherever we go. Wherever you go, there's a culture there. And your voice can help really make that culture better. Let's have some action plans. Let's have some next steps. And taking next steps in the process of continuing the legacy of freedom for each other on campus, here in Jamestown, in North Dakota, in the United States. Let's continue the vision. Then we can also say from the inside out with integrity, because we're doing it, right? We can say it from the inside out. I have a vision. I'd like you to repeat after me, if that's all right. I have a vision. Why are we not saying I have a dream? We're alive. We're able to do some things right now because someone before us had a dream for us, and we're celebrating that man today. Repeat after me. I have a vision. Why don't we stand up? I'm standing. And you're about to leave anyway. You're going to stand eventually. None of you are sleeping here, right? So don't get mad at me because I'm asking you to stand. No, but I'm just getting you to. Let's say it again. I have a vision. I have a vision. I'm living the vision. Sorry, I paused. I'm living the vision. All right, let's live the vision together. Thank you so much for having me. I want you guys to have a great year and a great evening. Thank you.